She-Hulk has turned out to be a ratings disaster. Yes, you can look up that info, that is quotable. But also, it's turned out to be a prime example of Hollywood not knowing how to write women. It's also turned out to be a prime example of a dead horse. So let's talk about this nosedive of a television show. And before we go, I want to give a special shout out to this unofficial Stan account at She-Hulk. This is prime example of a toxic feminist Twitter account who is basically nothing more than a Stan account. I thought Stan culture kind of died with Tumblr, but I was obviously wrong. These people will defend their special television shows until it's dead. And these people don't actually help, because these accounts at first glance look very official. As you can see here, look guys, it's quite simple. As some of it appeals to you, don't like it, don't watch it. And the other comment was the incel one, which is becoming completely overused. These accounts are not helping television shows and things, and if your entire personality and fan of a television show comes down to fuckable, there is a major problem with you. Prime example of toxic behaviour on the internet. Now let's start the show. She-Hulk has gone through many iterations, and going by some of the leaks backstage, and again don't quote me on this, the show went through major re-edits and retooling after production, to the point that most of what we're seeing now doesn't bear a resemblance to the actual show. The show is episodic, so continuity has no real bearing in this. The show is not only badly written, but it also forgets its own story and just moves on to the next. They also turned Hulk, who had to deal with so much, into a less than satisfactory character, because they took his pain and suffering and turned it into, well, I have self-control because I've been catcalled. Oh please, no one is catcalling you, honey. Then it did the twerking. But the prime example with this show is it can't find its story and it can't find its characters. It's like Ally McBeal. But Ally McBeal in its early days had some good writing, great funny characters, and genuinely good scripting, where this show is trying to be Ally McBeal in the MCU, but like I said, Hollywood can't write women, and this is prime example of it. Instead of making a strong female lead, they made someone who is extremely toxic. They've also made someone who is very self-centered. This show also suffers from bad special effects and CGI. And I mean, when you look at something from 10 years ago, it looks miles better than most television series and movies now, especially the big budget stuff. There are many reasons for this, but also Disney, Marvel choosing to put deadlines on their artists which are completely infeasible. There's no way they can complete this work at this speed. This show doesn't have a voice. It looks like a PlayStation 2 video game cutscene, and some of those actually look far better than this. And overall, this show is not only a lesson in how to alienate your audience, but it's also a lesson of how not to write. Marvel tend to think that they have the audience, the comic book fans already there. So let's try and make it something that appeals to a broader audience. The problem is they're trying to appease people who don't care about this content. They don't care about Marvel. They don't care about comic books. They don't care about action movies. It's not on their radar. And a lot of these people defending these shows, and like these Stan accounts and stuff, don't actually engage with the content they're defending. It just has women in it, therefore they must defend it. Again, toxic internet culture has gone into this show, and the minute even Stan accounts or real accounts or whatever accounts say, if you don't like us, don't watch it, it gets people's backs up and we're not even going to give it a try. I watched through the first few episodes of this show, and I've caught up on the most recent, cringing my way through it. And all I keep thinking is, this is completely not how to write women. There are amazing women on screen. I was watching Third Watch, a great television show from the late 90s, early 2000s. And you look at the women in that show, They are rounded characters with their own arcs, their own motivations, their own stories, who don't lecture people. They are part of it. They are EMTs, they are police officers, they are countless other people within that Third Watch universe in ER. Because yes, that was a spin-off. And you look at the writing of that show, and you look at the female characters, they're actually characters. They're actually fleshed out and rounded and have great depth. And progressively over the last sort of 5-6 years, I've noticed, and this is true of male characters as well now, Hollywood isn't writing well-rounded, fleshed out characters. They write archetypes. They want an archetype. They just want a very moral character with no depth. They just want someone the audience can project into, and that's a real shame. She-Hulk is a prime example of bad, lazy writing. It's a prime example of bad editing. It's a prime example of bad special effects. This is prime example of a television show that, if it was on network TV, probably would have been cancelled after the first few episodes, let's be real. But Marvel, Disney, because they're the same thing, don't really care about ratings. They don't care about numbers. They don't care about reaction. They just want content for a streaming service. And you know what's funny? I've seen fan productions, cosplays, fan art, and so on of She-Hulk, which looks a million times better than this. Why not hire those people? Why not tell that story? It's why now, with the reboot of Daredevil for Disney Plus, and they're doing this multiverse thing, they can now say, well, it didn't work, it's in a different universe. Or, oh, it flopped, we'll just ignore it, it's in a different universe. And that is Get Out Clause lazy 101. It's tragic that modern television has come to this, but also, when I look at the She-Hulk of the comic books, the brilliant character with strength and a personality, who goes through hell and comes back. Why didn't they just read the comics and adapt those stories? Instead, we've got self-insert fan fiction of a generic character with no real depth, no real story, and she's just angry. This should not be how She-Hulk was, and it's sad that it's come to this.